Welcome, everyone, to Alaska Quarterly Review's Reading and Conversation series. I am Ronald Spatz, co-founder and editor-in-chief of Alaska Quarterly Review, and this event is being recorded and will be available on demand on the Alaska Quarterly Review YouTube channel. Before we begin, I'd like to make a few important acknowledgments. Alaska Quarterly Review gratefully acknowledges the Anchorage Museum for hosting and providing technical support for this event, and the Center for the Narrative and Lyric Arts, Alaska Quarterly Review's 501c3 umbrella organization, makes this event possible. I also want to make a land acknowledgement. Alaska Quarterly Review recognizes the indigenous land on which all Alaskans live. Alaska Quarterly Review is located in Anchorage, and Anchorage is Dena'ina homeland. Dena'ina is the language spoken by the traditional, present, and future caretakers of this land, and land acknowledgement opens a space with gratefulness and respect for the contributions, innovations, and contemporary perspective of Indigenous peoples and marks our collective movement toward decolonization and equity. Today, we are featuring MHC, who will read her PUSHCART Prize winning essay, Hello from the Children of Planet Earth, that first appeared in Alaska Quarterly Review. This exceptional essay was her debut publication, and it is adapted from a forthcoming book on human predation, the human practice of animal bodily extraction as a distinct form of violence, which she calls domestic predation. MHC is a Canadian lawyer based in Toronto, Ontario, who formerly served as counsel for the Department of Justice Canada. She is currently the 2024-2026 inaugural postdoctoral fellow in animal law at the University of Toronto Faculty of Law. MH earned her Master of Laws degree from the University of Toronto and her Doctor of Judicial Science, Harvard Law School, a research-focused doctoral degree in law, equivalent to a PhD, where she was affiliated with the Brooks McCormick Jr. Animal Law and Policy Program. Her postdoctoral work builds on her dissertation, Domestic Predation, a Legal Architecture for Human Systems of Extractive Violence. She is currently teaching the Animal Law Seminar at the University of Toronto, and she is also the creator and director of the Museum of Human Predation Project. It is my honor and pleasure to welcome MHC.
Hello from the children of planet Earth. There is a message on Voyager 1 and 2, space probes that have been sailing away from the planet Earth for almost 50 years. The message is cut into a 12-inch gold-plated copper disc and contains 115 images and 35 sound recordings of life on Earth, 90 minutes of music, and greetings spoken in 55 different human languages. There are images of mathematical equations, bridges, a strand of DNA, and a human mother nursing an infant. There are bird sounds, folk songs, an aria, and a recording of the brainwaves of one of the creators, Andrienne, meditating on the wonder of being in love. Hello from the children of planet Earth, a voice says in English. The golden record is supposed to remain legible for 1 billion years. As an artifact of the human story, this object contains vital information about the beings who made it. That information is not, however, revealed in the contents of the message, but in how these beings had positioned certain parts of themselves in the light and other parts in shadow when they sat for their portrait. Of all the pieces of information conveyed by the golden record about the beings who made it, the most important is that the image they made is not an image of what the beings are, but what the beings imagine themselves to be. and it is the distance between these that tells us we are dealing with authors, with all the freedom and distortion this entails. It is no surprise that the human account of itself, whether in the record or in other human reveries, does little to convey the second most important thing about them. It will not be clear just from speaking to a human that it is an animal, or that, like many animals, it lives by killing and consuming the bodily material of other animals. It will not be clear from their accounts of what makes us human that they have developed a unique predatory style that is built on the practice of holding and keeping prey alive and breeding them in perpetuity so that their flesh, fluids, skin, fur, ova, and offspring can be extracted over time. This predatory method, which may be described as domestic predation, is an innovation on prototypal predation because it incorporates a pre-slaughter period of preservation. It delays the act of killing so that not only the material in hand, but all biological materials that can potentially be generated by the body can be fully appropriated. The domestic predator thereby extends the act of taking into the future by shifting its focus from the dead to the living animal. This human focus is not, however, on life as an ultimate end. The focus is on the use of life in the production of death. Thus, in contrast to Dr. Frankenstein, who sought to use dead body parts to create life, the human uses life to create dead body parts. At the center of the subsistence model is the occupation of the sexual and reproductive functions of other animals, which allows the domestic predator to continue bodily extraction beyond the life of any individual animal through the supply of offspring. As the human John Lee explains, a strong reproductive program delivers a steady pipeline of replacements. There is no secret to reproductive success, Lee says. The key is getting more semen in more cows. These efforts are referred to as setting the animals up for success. The prolongation of life for the in vivo extraction of prized reproductive materials, such as milk and eggs, connects domestic predation to parasitism. Parasitism is the consumption of a living creature over time, or, as the human E.O. Wilson explains, it is the practice of eating prey in units of less than one. Domestic predation is an innovation on prototypal parasitism, however, because it allows a parasite to engage in vivo consumption without having to live inside or directly on their prey. As with the extraction of offspring from animals, the extraction of substances such as milk and eggs is also centered on sexual and reproductive control. For instance, the process of lactation, which is the maternal response that evolved to support the survival of milk-dependent offspring, is activated by repeatedly impregnating female mammals, such as cows. This method of production involves compelling cows or other mammals to birth a calf and then removing the calf so that the human milkers can assume the place of the calf in the mother-baby dyad. As human Marina von Keyserlingk explains, cow milk extraction is achieved by redirecting the nursing behavior of mother cows to human milkers. When a calf suckles on his mother's teats, it triggers the secretion of the hormone oxytocin. This hormone causes milk to be released from the upper chambers of the mammary glands of the calf's mother into the lower cisterns and teats, where it can then be consumed by the calf. In addition to promoting milk letdown, oxytocin also plays an important role in the formation of maternal bonds between mothers and their offspring. The human provokes this neuroendocrine release of oxytocin by mimicking the stimulation of a cow's teats by her calf. This is accomplished by manual or machine stimulation, although other methods of stimulation are continually being invented and tested by humans, such as playing the calls of hungry calves, presenting cows with calf odors from calf hairs, and vaginal stimulation. Human methods of stimulation for inducing milk release then displace the calf as an associational trigger or learned condition for lactation. Human extraction of milk from cows is also achieved by various methods that have been developed for overcoming the cow's physiological and neuroendocrinological attempts to withhold her milk from human milkers, which the human refers to as disturbed milk ejection. Oxytocin release is suppressed in cows under emotional stress, in cows who are milked by humans for the first time, or in cows who are switched from nursing a calf to human or machine milking. Humans have recognized that oxytocin suppression and disturbed milk ejection may be an attempt by the cow to keep her milk for her calf. Humans bypass this hormonal block by removing calves from their mothers at the time of birth, thereby preventing the establishment of maternal bonds in the first place. Humans also render ejection resistance futile by injecting oxytocin into a cow before they milk her. The second way that cows regulate milk production is through a protein contained in their milk that inhibits lactation, which the human calls the feedback inhibitor of lactation, or FIL. Because of this protein, leftover milk in a cow's udders acts as a cellular signal to decrease milk production, thereby limiting the amount of milk produced by a cow to the needs of her calf. To overcome this natural inhibitor of milk production, the human places cows under an intensive milking regimen in which they are milked 3 or more times daily, with the goal of completely emptying the udder of milk during each extraction session. This technique effectively compels the udder to communicate that more milk must be made to feed an insatiably hungry calf. Thus, milking frequency is not a response to the high volumes of milk production we see in human extraction systems today. Rather, high volumes of milk production are a response to high frequency and high intensity milking. As the archaeologist human Sitz Botoma explains, the enormous size of the udder of the modern dairy cow is not a domestication characteristic. Only the shape of the udder is hereditary. When cows are left to suckle their own calves, they develop only a small udder, densely covered with hairs. The excessive size of the udder, Botoma explains, is induced by the milking regime, whether milking is done by hand or by machine. Through such ingenious manipulations, humans have been able to fully deplete the total metabolic and reproductive capacities, which may be utilized by a cow over a 20-year lifespan, in just 3 to 4 years. At the end of this extraction cycle, many cows will be physically compromised by conditions such as lameness and injury, diseases of the udder, udder, and emaciation. These bodies can then be transported to sites of mass assembly and mass killing and harvested as carcasses. Humans are voracious extractors of milk from the bodies of other mammals. In a single yearly cycle, humans extract roughly 800 million tons of milk from the animals they hold. To take hold of life as an engine of production means taking hold of the sexual and reproductive functions of other animals. As a driver manipulates the controls of a car to utilize its vehicular power as a means of transportation, the domestic predator manipulates the sexual and reproductive organs of an animal to commandeer their generative power as an engine of production and reproduction. In its pursuit of this power, humans have invented tools and techniques and built infrastructures for exercising prolonged, intimate control over the bodies of other animals and for compelling such bodies to grow, produce, and reproduce. In bovine production and extraction systems, for instance, semen is extracted by humans from bulls, either by stimulating the bull's rectum by human hand or by electrical probes. Another method for extracting semen from bulls is the diverted intercourse method. This method involves inciting sexual intercourse between male animals with mount animals under varying degrees of restraint or confinement. After conducting several false mounts, the thrust of the bull is diverted and their ejaculate is collected by a human semen collector using a device called an artificial vagina. Bulls and mount animals are restrained and controlled during these procedures in steel chutes and/or by ropes or staffs attached to metal rings that have been installed in the animal's nasal septum. Insemination of female animals is accomplished either by techniques of artificial insemination or by human orchestrated animal intercourse, while one or both animals are restrained or confined. Artificial insemination of cows, for instance, involves a technique known as rectovaginal fixation of the cervix. In this procedure, a cow is restrained by a chain or headlock that prevents the cow from moving forward or backing up. Some cows may require containment in a breeding chute or a dark box made of metal or wood. While the cow is restrained, the human inseminator inserts its arm deep into a cow's rectum and grabs hold of her cervix through the rectal wall. With the other hand, the human inserts an insemination rod through the vagina and then through the fixed cervix and injects the semen through the rod and into the uterus. A cow may attempt to kick when a human pushes its hand into her rectum, but once the hand is inside the rectum, this causes the cow to arch her back and positions the spine in a way that will inhibit kicking. These technologies of domestic predation can be seen as the great legacy of the human species. It is not, however, a legacy that is over-amplified in the human account of itself. The details of sexual and reproductive control appear instead to have been quietly set aside in the curatorial process. Legal prohibitions on sexual contact between humans and animals, or bestiality, which is condemned as an offense against morality, push such practices further into the shadows of the popular imagination. In a much finer print, however, every jurisdiction that has condemned acts of bestiality makes an exception, either implicitly or explicitly, to protect sexual engagements between humans and animals from legal prosecution when performed for the purpose of domestic predation. Without control over breeding, there is no control over the biological processes of growth and reproduction, which is the principal imperative of domestic predation. Putting an end to human sexual engagements with other animals would mean putting an end to the human practice of domestication. By whatever power you arrive at this place, it will become clear that the human account of the story of our world will not help you understand the objects and infrastructures of these signal achievements of the human being. The metal restraining chutes, the concrete stalls, their individual chains and tethers, the layered encrusted cages, the darkened, rank outbuildings, the pits of neon-colored waste, the perforated trailers, stuffed with creature life, skimming through the silent prairie night, the glistening slaughter chambers, the ropes in tension, the hooks, the whips, the prods, the nose prongs, the pliers, the scissors, the electric bath, the ejaculation probes, the insemination rods, the vials of semen, the breeding pens, the long glove, the plastic apron, the stained walls. This vast nether architecture on the underside of the human story, which to anyone else would seem to be its main monument. The record will be inadequate in shedding light on the instruments and facilities of bodily restraint, confinement, extraction, and slaughter that will inescapably unfold before your eyes. You will not be prepared to confront the 26 billion other animals that the human faction is presently holding as living inventory under regimes of bodily extraction and sexual and reproductive control, or to witness the more than 100 billion individual animals who will be killed in every yearly cycle for the purposes of extraction. With the information you have been provided, you will not appreciate a primary cause for how the face of this world came to be denuded, or how the ecological patterns of life evolved, and you will fail to grasp how the biological inventory held by humans has come to eclipse all other forms of life. The story of the human cannot be described without some explanation of this corpus of living prey and the means by which it is held. Without some knowledge of the human project of domestic predation, you will not be able to make sense of their enclosure of the land and their partitioning of the world, and the songs they sing, the gods they imagine, their humor and their terrors, reconfigured into stories of the dead who nonetheless live, and the living who ought to be dead. These too will be unfathomable to you. Considering these facts, it would not do harm to the human account as a matter of accuracy to de-emphasize some elements that are typically recounted in it, and to take note of the true monuments of the human experience, which are typically neglected. Thank you.